edition of the Water Guy Show. This is Paul, your Connecticut water guy, and we've got a packed room here today. We have Moose, one of our new guys.
Hey, y'all.
he's shy still. And as usual, we've got Ethan in the background, making sure that everything goes as planned, and hopefully can factoid check us like he normally does, keep everybody honest if needed. Today's episode is it's going to be a little different because we are the water experts, and what we specialize in, as everybody that's heard this before probably knows, is all the water for houses, restaurants, industrial and commercial applications, all the water that comes into them. So we're, for the new folks that are joining, this is Advanced Water Systems. We are the just finished, got all the numbers back in, and we are officially in 2023 the largest dealer of the Connecticut products in the entire world. So we're super proud of that. And we've got 12 offices spread from Virginia down into the Carolinas and down into Georgia. And then we have an office out in Denver. So got a pretty wide footprint here, and we are specialists in dealing with just about any type of water coming into your house that or business that you might run into, which is kind of interesting because today we're going to be talking about pools. We call this P is for pools.
P is for pools.
P is for pools, exactly. So yeah, I know. So if you're listening, you're probably thinking, well, what do pools have to do with water, like your kind of water? And there's some selfish reasons for this because both my brother-in-law and myself are being almost blackmailed by our spouses to consider getting a pool. So we're both checking into what the cost is, what the pros and the cons, and how much space and all that other good stuff. But like most of our episodes, we started digging in and getting a whole bunch of information, and we felt that this was appropriate to share on the Water Guy Show. So, there's 3 types of pools in terms of construction, pretty much. You got the in-ground pool, you got the indoor pool, and you've got the above-ground pool. That's pretty much what your choices are. The indoor pool, that's a rare one. I grew up did my high school time outside Chicago. I actually had a buddy that had an indoor pool.
Rich guy.
Yeah, he wasn't in poverty, that's for sure. But to me, that was always fascinating. But it was one of those things that I remember it because we never had burning eyes or anything when we went swimming in this pool. And he used to tell me, yeah, it doesn't use chlorine, it used UV. And I never really paid attention to that back then because I just knew that I had a buddy that had an in-house pool. And in January and February, when it was negative 20, we were swimming in the pool.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, that's something different. But you're on the right track. I told you, everybody, he's new.
Yeah.
He'll pick it up as we go along.
Just trying to throw in little tidbits here and there,
So the indoor pool was pretty cool because it really showed me that you can have a pool and not have your eyes burn. And if it wasn't for that, I would just assume that every single pool in the world is meant to basically make you feel miserable when you get out of it. Feels great when you're in the thing, but when you're done, you can't see, you're all burny and itchy, and it's just bad. So the in-ground and the above-ground are the typical ones that you see around this area. As most folks know, and there's benefits to both. The in-ground one, it's in the ground. It's got insulation from the dirt on 3 sides of it, and basically it's a lot more stable when it comes to temperature, and it costs more. It's the most expensive way to go. We aren't going to get into the construction of the pools because that's way beyond the scope of what we're trying to talk about here today. But the above-ground pool, I had some buddies back in my prior life that had some above-ground pools, thought that would make their spouses happy. And what they found out was that it sounds great and it's cool most of the time, but when it's hot outside, your pool is hot. And it's miserable. And it was a complete waste of money. And I know. If you got an above ground pool, you're probably going, yep, I wish I'd have known that before I put the pool in. So if you're considering one, just know that on those hot days when you're probably going to want the pool the most is when you're probably going to be the most disappointed in them.
Hmm.
So anyway, that's about all I'll say about the actual construction of them, because we were thinking of actually trying to get a pool guy in here, but the room is not big enough to have that many people, and that would turn into a multi-day show probably. So we did digging independent research on our own here, as potential consumers, and basically what we found is that chlorine pools that's pretty much what everything is. And let's see. So chlorine pools, as the name implies, it uses chlorine to keep the pool disinfected from bacteria and algae and things like that, as well as all the things that people tend to bring into the pool with them, like sweat, urine, and other things that
Bodily fluids.
Bodily fluids. Yep, saliva would be a great example. I've seen people spit in the pool before.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, pools are not a sterile environment, but they put chlorine in them to go ahead and help keep them safe. So the challenge is the exposure to chlorine. And this is why earlier, and I skipped over our entire introduction, which, should I do that? No. What do you think? Yes, let's go ahead and do it now. We already broke the ice. So if you're hearing this and you want to write down how to reach us, give us some feedback, hopefully positive feedback, you can do that at 877-60-WATER, or visit us on the website at kinetico-richmond.com. And we would love to hear anything that anybody listening has to say, or recommendations on future episodes. But our most important goal is to try to help people and grow our Kinetico family as large as we possibly can here. So that was my skipped over introduction. But chlorine is found in, as you probably heard at some of the kind of the intro commercials to to this radio show. Chlorine is one of those things that it's basically at the same level as a pool. When you're dealing with city water. So we use that example a lot actually when we're in the house to show folks that if they've got City of Richmond or Henrico or Hanover, they've actually got chlorine levels that are equivalent to what it takes to sanitize a pool.
Very true.
Yeah, very true. And there's other things.
Yep.
Other things in the water that are created as a result of having chlorine in there. But just basic chlorine pools. If you've ever been to a pool, you recognize a lot of these, but I just wanted to kind of spell them out in case somebody it didn't really put the dots together and realize that some of these things were actually caused by chlorine exposure. We've got, according to the CDC, so this isn't just my own list that I made up, but the CDC lists symptoms of chlorine exposure as blurred vision, skin injuries similar to frostbite, coughing. I can tell you that I've gotten out of some pools before that smelled pretty strong, and I coughed, and I didn't really realize what it was from, but now I know for sure that was chlorine exposure.
Chlorine causes a lot of pulmonary issues.
Oh.
Yeah. Documented.
Yes. Chest tightness kind of goes what you're describing there, because chest tightness typically people think they're having a heart attack, and that's no good. It could cause a burning sensation in your ear, nose, eyes, nose, and throat. Yeah, don't get it in your eyes on purpose.
Yeah.
So it could cause difficulty breathing. It can cause nausea, vomiting, watery eyes, wheezing. You know what wheezing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's wheezing? Oh yeah.
There you go.
He's definitely got restricted breathing there.
Yeah.
And then the last one here kind of surprised me. Fluid in the lungs that can last for hours.
Yep.
Have you ever had any of that?
No, I mean, the itchy eyes and stuff like that. Yeah, sure, but.
So when was the last time you were in a pool? Anybody can chime in.
Like 4 weeks ago.
4 weeks.
Yeah, a couple weeks, probably 3 weeks. Yeah.
What about you?
Summer.
Summer, so we're talking 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
So 4 or 5 weeks, 4 or 5 months. I don't remember the last time I was in a pool, actually.
I was cold plunging. That was the only reason I was in that pool.
Oh,
Yeah.
trying to do a little polar plunge.
Polar plunge.
It wasn't an indoor thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming it was still a chlorinated pool. It wasn't like a pond
Very
with
heavily.
fish.
Yep, you can. In the cold, you can feel it just as much as you can in the heat. If it just hits your skin, and you come out and you're just cold and dry and scaly and reptilian almost. You know?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
You go in like a fish, come out like a reptile.
Yep.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I've actually, through all of this, I was trying to think back. I don't remember. I know I've been in a pool because my brother-in-law had a pool at his last house. That's probably it, probably 2 years ago.
Mm.
But, yeah, that was one of those things. I really don't enjoy going to the pool because of what we know now.
Mm.
So I go to the pool and I smell, you can smell
Yeah.
the chlorine. It's kind of like going to a restaurant and they give you a glass of water.
Yeah, you can never
And you
go back.
As soon as you put that thing up to
Yeah.
your face, you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
people drink this. Yeah. If you're listening and you've had that happen, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why they put lemon in the water to help mask some of the smell and the taste.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a study done back in 2002, and it was there was basically there's disinfection byproducts that are created, and this is kind of Moose, you're going to get a kick out of this one because we were just talking about this with another customer earlier this week. So as chlorinated tap water runs into organics and things, it creates other chemical compounds. And these are called disinfection byproducts. So the other day, we were talking about specifically, you remember, 4 of them?
Yeah, bromofoam, chlorofoam, dichloromethane, bromodichloromethane.
Bingo. Wow. He's a keeper.
Cha-ching.
He's definitely a keeper. So those are the trihalomethanes that really, those are the regulated ones that the EPA says that you can only have 80 parts per billion with a B. Very, very small amount of those things. But they are some of these disinfection byproducts. Now, there's over 600 disinfection byproducts. Mm-hmm. That's crazy to me.
And yes, chloroform, just like the stuff that kidnappers use to put people to sleep. Exactly that.
That's terrible.
Yep.
Kidnappers.
Kidnappers.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, there was something I saw.
I haven't used that word in a while.
Yeah, I didn't even. Can you say that word anymore?
I don't know. Yeah,
But
things are sensitive these days.
well, we're unfiltered on this show.
Yeah.
So if you like unfiltered, this is the place to be. Unless you like your water filtered, and then this is the place to be. So yeah, you like that?
That was nice. That was nice. I will say.
So we got over 600 disinfection byproducts, including haloacetic acids. Those are no bueno either. That's definitely something you don't want to expose yourself on purpose. And that was chlorinated tap water that they did this test on. The water that's in pools has almost the same problems. And it's really not surprising because in many pools, what do they fill it with? City water.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting with, almost the same exact makeup. And then, unlike the water that comes out of your faucet at your house, you got a bunch of people jumping in there and sweating and letting out all sorts of bodily fluids.
And it's nuked with chlorine, and they think that's going to get rid of everything, but
yeah,
surprise,
yeah, the chlorine does its job, but it also breaks down into all these horrible little things. Many of them are carcinogens.
Mm-hmm.
Carcinogens, yeah, that's bad.
Cancer causing.
Cancer causing, yes. I knew we brought him in here to be able to point that out.
I'm just here for the ad libs, honestly.
He's traumatized. He'll probably never show up here again.
Yeah.
No, in all fairness, he's doing a great job. He's picking this up and very passionate about it. He's a great member of the team, so we're excited to have him. The halo acetic acids, those HAAs that I just mentioned, without this turning into a nerd out hour, they are, I said they're no bueno. They are definitely something you don't want to run into on purpose, but they are detrimental to your liver, your nervous system, your reproductive system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And here's the kind of the scary things. These HAAs, which are part of those 600 disinfection byproducts, they've done some testing on swimmers. And after these swimmers got done swimming, then they actually tested them 20 to 30 minutes after they had gotten out of the pool, and they still had detectable levels.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's not one of those things. They have proven that your body definitely takes this stuff in, and it can hang on to it for at least 20 to 30 minutes. Obviously, tests done after that couldn't really find anything really, really long term, but it doesn't take a lot of exposure to some of these bad things to cause bad problems. So, if you're a swimmer, just keep that in mind that, this is one of those things. We'll talk. Actually, we're going to get into that pretty quick. But chlorinated pools, which are pretty much almost every pool that's out there is chlorinated. Those gases that come off of those when the chlorine reacts with all that stuff, a lot of those gases are actually like heavier, so they can hang around near the surface of the water. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine you're swimming and you take a gulp of air, you swim and you take a gulp of air, you're actually getting like the worst air because it's right there at the surface of the water.
Yep.
So they have found that the gases from chlorinated pools cause rectal and bladder cancer, as well as cardiovascular disease. And you pointed that out a little earlier.
Lung issues, all sorts of stuff. It's not good for you.
It's almost like he doesn't know the notes here, but in children, it increases asthma and allergies. So, yep, you are spot on with exactly, pretty much, it's just bad for your breathing. And believe it or not, I'm bad on time because we're getting close to our first break. So don't go away. We got way more pool information coming right after the messages, and we'll see you in a sec. All right, welcome back. Appreciate the loyalty. This is the Water Guy Show with Paul and
Moose,
yes. And we have Ethan standing in the background guarding, making sure nobody comes in. So, before the break, this is the P is for Pools show today. And before the break, we were talking about types of pools and chlorine and some of the nasty things that chlorine in the pools does. And really, it does the same thing that it does in your city water. So not surprising that the exact same problems that we deal with on a water treatment level can exist in the pools. And even though most of us are not in the pool constantly, but some of us are in the pool regularly, getting a lot of, especially after the beginning of the year here, there's a New Year's resolution to exercise more. A lot of folks are actually going to the pools pretty regularly. Actually, that's kind of funny because one of the girls in the office, she, during our research for today's episode, she would put her headphones on and then purposely not listen because she's a swimmer. Yes. So she actually refused to hear any of the stuff that we were researching because she didn't want it to demotivate her.
Trying to sidestep the placebo effect. It seems.
Yeah, she's going to have to hear it eventually because I'll probably put it on like the loudspeaker. Yeah. But for now she can enjoy the bliss of not knowing. But so we were talking about the gases from the chlorinated pools cause all sorts of things from cancers of rectal and bladder to cardiovascular disease. and in kids, it raises the risk of asthma and allergies. So related to that, there was actually a study on first time I read this, a study on 847. The first time I read it, I said gangsters, and I was like, why would they study gangsters? It's youngsters. I haven't seen that word in forever.
Youngsters.
Yeah, they did not study gangsters. They were studying youngsters. And they called the youngsters age 13 to 18. So a decent amount of these youngsters, and they studied them over basically their activity involved swimming, and they were looking at these kids to see how much time they were actually spending in the pool swimming. And if what they found, you're going to love this. So if the kids were swimming between 100 and 500 hours, they found that they actually had twice the risk of asthma later in life. So,
Wow.
yeah. So basically, if you're in a pool more than 100 hours, you're at almost double the risk
At what time frame?
of having asthma if you're under the age of 18.
At 100 hours period?
100. Well, they did a total, yeah.
Wow. I definitely
Didn't know
am
that
at
one.
risk.
You're at risk?
I spent so much time in the pool as a kid. You could not get me out of the pool for the life of me. I have no
Yeah.
asthma yet, though.
You ever have trouble breathing?
Wheezing and stuff.
Yeah, you did the wheezing
I
thing
do a
pretty
lot of
easily.
exercise, so I feel like
You ever
that
feel
counteracts
tired?
it. Yeah. You ever feel tired?
I'll be like the fortune teller over here. Do you ever feel tired?
I did.
Do you ever feel hungry? No, just kidding. The hunger has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I saw that it also has a bit of an effect on your gut flora,
Oh,
the chlorine from pools, and that is something that I dealt with growing up. I had a lot of. I told you the other day I had a lot of acid growing up in my stomach, and I would swim ridiculously, and I was a little chubby little kid with acid reflux, and it couldn't get me out of the pool. So there might be a tie there.
I didn't even think about that. I wasn't going to say anything about the chubby.
Well, I'm good now.
But yeah, you don't look.
I made it on the other side.
For the record, he's not chubby. He's very very in shape.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, great.
He usually.
You're supposed to have a $20 bill over here now. All right, so back to the gangsters. So the youngsters in the pool that got between 500 and 1,000 hours were over twice the risk. So pretty much, if you were over 500 hours in the pool, you were more than double the risk
Wow.
of having asthma. And if you were one of those youngsters that got over 1,000 hours in the pool, almost four times the risk.
Wow.
So it went up pretty significantly once you got a lot of hours into the pool. So now I know you're thinking back, how many hours did I put in the pool?
I put in a lot. I definitely put in 1,000.
I mean,
Before the age of what was it, like 13?
18?
18? Yeah, I put in like thousands of hours.
thousands?
Probably.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, you're lucky you're still here.
I know.
So yeah, you're at a 4 times higher risk, but that could explain some of your other things, your stomach issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's a whole litany of things that it does affect. In 2003, there was a Belgian study. I'm not even going to say anything funny about that, but there's a Belgian study when chlorine reacts with organics, urine, and sweat, it forms trichloramines.
Wow.
Trichloramines, yes. It damages the cellular barrier that protects the lungs. And that's kind of why the more exposure you have, the higher your risk for asthma, because it's actually damaging the developing tissue that's supposed to protect you.
Chlorine is corrosive.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually, it was a pretty horrific way to do chemical warfare back in World War One? You're the history guy. Ethan's the history guy. Both?
Yeah, it was.
The Germans used
It was
it
very.
in World War II.
Yeah, they started using it in World War One near the tail end.
They called it mustard gas.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then for some reason it was made a war crime, but
We've
it,
gotten
Ugh.
soft.
it was extremely popular in World War Two. Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, World War II was brutal.
I did not know that's what mustard gas was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I do remember little
I thought it
weird
was
things.
real mustard.
No, it had nothing to do with mustard.
Mustard at all?
It was they just called
Chlorine.
it maybe because I think it had a yellowish tint to it.
Ah,
I think I remember something about it was
Oh,
the
okay.
color.
Gotcha.
But yeah, you'd basically just be suffocating because your lungs would just almost decompose from being burned.
Holy
Yeah, that's a
crap.
horrific way to go. So the Belgian study found that not only the swimmers that are gulping air, at the water surface, but the people that were in the pools, like the observers,
Uh-huh.
actually had damages to their lungs
Around the pool?
because it's one of those things that I'm going to skip to my next page of notes here. But so you may have missed that it forms trichloramines.
Mm.
May sound familiar because our water system here adds chloramines to the water. So there are a couple of different types of chloramines. So you got monochloramines, you've got dichloramines, and you got trichloramines. So that study was based on the trichloramines, which is actually it's the worst of the three.
Wow.
And it's the worst of the three because it's 400 times more volatile than the other ones.
Mm.
And basically, it because it's so volatile, it likes to form gases.
Mm.
So it's more of an air quality issue when you're dealing with the trichloramines. I told you this was going to be an episode of nerding out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
The more you know.
the more you know, the less you want to go out and enjoy.
Yep.
In some cases. But yeah, it has caused so many issues with breathing primarily that they've actually coined tracheobronchitis. The common name for that is chlorine cough.
Wow.
Isn't that terrible? It's so
That is bad.
yeah, things you just wish you didn't know. So yeah, that is from the chloramines, all types, but primarily the trichloramines are the worst. So the other thing that they found is that the water temperature impacts how a lot of these things react. The warmer the water is, really your body receives, like if you jump in cold water, like you just did the polar plunge in the pool, probably wasn't the real polar plunge. It was probably just like a
I'm no
chilly
Wim
plunge.
Hof, but it was pretty dang cold. I had to do 2-minute increments, but
2 minutes?
2 minutes, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I have a spa. I have a hot tub,
Mm.
which I hate.
Mm.
I hate that thing because it burns my eyes,
Mm.
makes me feel horrible when I get out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because it's got chlorine in it.
And you get a little woozy, don't you? Like you
yeah,
get a little-
well, because I like it about 101,
Mm.
which isn't really hot. I mean, have you ever been at one of those spas? You get in, you put your toe in there, and you're like, oh no, I'm not gonna cook my foot.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had those?
Yeah.
I don't know how some people can enjoy like 104 degrees. That's ridiculous hot.
Yeah, that is really hot.
So I like mine at like 101, but that's still enough that I could definitely feel the effects of the chlorine in my spa. And I didn't. I've tried different things. They have a hydrogen peroxide based sanitization for spas that you really can't do for a pool because pools are so big. But I tried to get away from chlorine because I knew even long when I bought the spa, I knew that I didn't really want chlorine around me if I could avoid it. But the peroxide system, I think they call it the Bakwa, I just didn't like it. It left everything was like had this horrific film around it, and it just was nasty. It never really felt clean, and it had kind of a weird smell. So I ended up going back to something that was kind of a lower chlorine version with minerals, like these little floating mineral stick thing,
Mm.
and that was supposed to help you with less chlorine in the water.
Kind of like saltwater pools.
Kind of like saltwater pools.
Hmm.
You know what? We're going to talk about saltwater pools. But since I talked about hot being worse, the spa is probably the worst thing, the hot tub, because your body is hot. You're sucking in a lot of this stuff through your skin, which you've seen demonstrations on that before.
Mm-hmm.
And it does, since the water is hot, you sweat more. When you sweat more, you're putting a lot more of these body liquids into the water, and the water, of course, has to sanitize it. So
And your pores open too, isn't it?
your pores are open.
Yeah.
Yep, you're just sucking this stuff in like a sponge. And I can tell because I get out of the spa and I just smell like chlorine for, even though it's a low chlorine one, I just smell like that for
Mm-hmm.
probably the next several hours.
Skin gets all shrivelly and.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not fun. That's why I don't even really enjoy it. So part of this exercise today was to maybe find out if there was yet another system. But I really got a chance to understand what I have in there even better, if nothing else. Because remember, I told you I had the floating little mineral stick.
Mm-hmm.
That can be part of what they call the copper silver ion treatment. And I believe now that that's what that is. So basically, all right, well, we're going to talk about saltwater pools. Jumping all around. So you got chlorinated pools. Chlorinated pools are bad. It's just, everybody asks me, I get a lot of customers who are like, are you telling me I should never get in a pool again? And I say, I would avoid getting in a chlorinated pool if you can avoid it. But I realize that people are people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we like what we like, and we're willing to expose ourselves to danger because the benefit outweighs the risk.
Yeah.
But hopefully this episode is going to at least let you think twice before you just jump in an over-chlorinated pool situation. So a lot of folks have switched over or are listening, and they're going to say, oh, well, I don't have chlorine in my pool. I have a saltwater pool. So the salt water comes from salt. So not
Mm-hmm.
surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And we know this because, well, saltwater pool still has chlorine that it uses to disinfect and sanitize the pool. And the way that it does that is the reactors, they take you put salt in the pool. Salt is sodium chloride.
Mm-hmm.
Chloride contains chlorine.
Mm-hmm.
So what ends up happening on a saltwater pool is your water is salty because you're literally throwing bags of pool salt, which, by the way, we sell cheaper than anybody else. So call us at 877-60-WATER.
Side note.
Side note, yep. And it's a funny story behind that, but let's just say that I thought that we were going to blow the doors off of the saltwater pool community, and that's just not we're not tapped into that side of things. So if you need pool salt cheap, call me. I've got a couple pallets of it still. But yeah, so you end up you throw these bags of salt right in your pool. So you are creating a slightly saltwater environment. It's not like the ocean, but it's enough chlorine that it can pull out of the chloride that it can use that to actually keep your pool sanitized using chlorine.
Mm.
So a saltwater pool does still use chlorine to do the magic. One of the benefits, I mean, saltwater pools they're great. I'd much rather jump in one of those. You can use less chlorine in them, and from what I understand, and I'm not selling pools, so I take this as the research that I've been able to do so far. The chlorine can be lower because the bacteria that can live in a saltwater environment there's not as much bacteria as a regular chlorinated pool. Because a regular chlorinated pool doesn't have any salt in the water, right? So you've got specific bacteria that just by being salty, you're going to go ahead and eliminate.
Mm.
So less load means less sanitization. So saltwater pools are better than a regular chlorine pool, definitely. But there's this other cool system that's out there. There's a bromine system, and then there's this other system, and I'll kind of I'm not trying to sell pools, obviously, but we're trying to talk about all the different options so that if somebody is considering getting a pool, they can at least have this conversation. But Our website is KineticoRichmond.com, and the phone number is 877-60-WATER. And you can always reach us. We've got the website. We've also got the YouTube channel at Kinetico Richmond as well. You can find us on there. There's a whole bunch. We're constantly, Moose is now in charge of making sure that our content is constantly being added and upgraded. And we've got the podcast on Water Guy Podcast. And yes, officially, we are on the Apple platform as of today. So pretty excited about that. Don't go away. We have a break coming right now, but more about pools. All right, and welcome back after that, whatever kind of break they put you through. But this is Paul with the Water Guy Show, and we've got special guest here today.
Moose.
Yep, he's self-introducing, and we have Ethan in the back to make sure that things stay on the rails.
I'm in the back.
And they are definitely trying to go off the rails today.
Yep.
So, I keep forgetting the intro. So we're if you're just now joining us, welcome. You're a little late into the show, but you're still going to get caught up here. This is Paul with Kinetico Advanced Water Systems, the largest Kinetico, part of the largest Kinetico dealer in the world. And we have an office here in Richmond, Virginia, over by the Richmond International Airport. I have to say that because there's a couple of airports in this general vicinity. But we specialize in all sorts of water problems, from drinking water to discolored water to acidic water and smelly water and bacteria water and pretty much anything. Uranium, radon. We've done everything that you could possibly imagine to water. But today's episode, you can find more about us on KineticoRichmond.com or on our website. Actually, that was the website, but on the YouTube channel of Kinetico Richmond, and the podcast. It's not The Water Guy, it's just Water Guy Podcast. And we are on all platforms. You can hear all of our prior episodes here, and I would definitely encourage you to do that. We have built up quite a fan base. I just got a phone call yesterday from a customer, not one of our customers, out of Canada.
Out of Canada.
So that was a big. If you're listening to the show, you've got a shout out.
She
right
specifically asked for Paul. She would not have it any other way. And Paul was like, I can't do it right now.
I can't help that. Yeah, so we did help her with some technical stuff. Even though she was way out of we couldn't really help her, but we were able to get her in the right direction.
Paul gave her solemn advice.
So anyway, normally we talk about, drinking water and toilet water and shower water, but today we're talking about pools. And this is kind of a cool episode. We started off talking about chlorine pools, which is basically almost every pool that's out there. And talked about all the problems that those pools have, and it's kind of similar. It's very similar, in fact, to the kind of water that we deal with when we're dealing with city water in people's houses. There's still disinfection byproducts that are created, and trihallomethanes, which are carcinogens, and you don't have to deal with, hopefully, some of the other problems like pharmaceuticals and stuff like that, but it all really depends on where they get the water from. And that's kind of funny because a lot of folks that have a pool, or somebody that knows somebody that has a pool, you don't just put a hose in a pool and run 50, 60,000 gallons of water into a pool. In many cases, you're going to go ahead and actually call up a delivery truck, a tanker, and they will go and they'll get water and bring it over and basically fill your pool with it. It's fast. It's a lot cheaper in most cases than paying for it right through your water meter and using your hose. But then again, where does that water come from? In our area, it ultimately comes from the James River for most of the water. So I joked about the pharmaceuticals, but you could have pharmaceuticals in your pool water now that I think about it.
Yeah.
That's kind of bad.
That's nasty.
But anyway, one of the other alternative methods, because part of this show was to really, dig up some good information on folks that are considering getting a pool or just kind of curious how a pool might impact your health. But one of the things that we dug up was on some alternate methods. Bromine is another word that people throw out there with a bromine pool. It's a little bit of it's kind of like a cousin to chlorine. It's actually better on the skin and causes about half of the irritations that you would see from a chlorine pool, or a chlorine pool that also uses ozone to help to help sanitize. But bromine is definitely. At first, I was thinking, oh well, bromine might be the answer here. But bromine still has mono, di, and tribromamines when ammonia is present. It still creates those disinfection byproducts. And let's just save that for a minute from now. But there's some pluses and some minuses if you're considering a bromine pool. If you've ever been in one, you'll know it because it has a weird smell. You ever been in a bromine pool?
I have not either.
I would try to describe it. If I ever had to describe it, you've smelled iodine, right? Or is that just my generation that used iodine?
I smelled iodine. I worked in the OR.
I had to step back there for a second. Yeah, iodine has a very unique smell that I don't really know if I could put my finger on it. It just smells like iodine, like potatoes almost. They have a unique smell. So the bromine has this unique smell, and literally it can like stick with you for a very long time. One of the other negative things with the bromine is it's very aggressive on metal. And if your pool is entirely made of plastic, it's probably not that big of a deal. But it doesn't like metal. And sometimes if you're trying to combine different systems, like the copper and silver ion system, that's the next one we're going to talk about, it may not work well together with that because it doesn't like metals. But bromine tends to leave stains also, kind of like brownish, almost like iodine stains, which is kind of funny because it does smell similar. So it's not one of those ideal things if you have like a bright white pool and you're trying to keep everything look nice and super hygienic. But on the positive side, it is far more effective than chlorine is.
Against bacteria, viruses, and stuff?
Yep. Does the same job with less of it. But here's... Its setup costs significantly more than a chlorine pool. That's a negative. But over time, it's cheaper to operate, and you'll make that money back. So the money, as long as you give it enough time, the money really isn't an issue. So I was kind of thinking, oh, well, we can deal with the smell and the stains and that other stuff. Maybe it's a better alternative. And then I found that bromamines are far more carcinogenic than chloramines.
Oh.
And that's where it just
That's a kicker.
completely, that was the kicker right there.
Damn.
So I'm not a big fan of the bromine pools.
Okay.
So carcinogens are not your friend.
I thought we had a solution there for a second.
I know, I actually did too. We were digging through this, and that's kind of fun. We spend probably an entire day and a half pulling together information for these shows.
Yeah.
That's a lot of research that folks don't have to do on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we were like, oh, bromine might be it. Might be the way to go. And then far more carcinogenic. And we were like, doggone it.
Damn.
Just pulled a rug right out from underneath us. But some of these other ones, they'll use like bromine or chlorine with ozone as a complement. And Moose is over here wrinkling his face up like, I've heard that word before.
Yeah, ozone, we use that.
We use that.
Yeah.
We definitely use it.
We do.
So we're actually dealers of an ozone product because we're the exclusive, the largest user of it in the area. and it's actually made and distributed originally out of California, but we are pretty much the dealer on the East Coast for it. So our ozone is a little different because a lot of times you'll see ozone that it's a gas, and usually it gets kind of bubbled into a system, and it's think of it like it's an extra oxygen. So what you're doing is kind of like OxyClean. You know how the extra oxygen cleanses? That's exactly how ozone works in water.
O3.
O3. There you go. See? He's just keeps banging them out of the park here today. So ozone is pretty effective. We do a lot of whole house reverse osmosis systems here, which as far as I know, we're the only ones in the area that do that yet. There's another company out of the Gloucester area that did them for a while, but I haven't heard their name in a while. But if you want perfect drinking water and perfect water throughout your entire house, reverse osmosis is the only way to go. And the way that process works is we take your water and we make it pure. So kind of like I hate using brand names, but Aquafina is purified water. So if you can imagine a big tank, like a 300-gallon tank full of purified water.
I'd love to tell them a story about the Apple guy, if I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Done.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give him his 30 seconds of fame here. But so we basically, I'll tell you the behind the scenes, and then he's going to jump in and tell his story on the Apple guy. So we take purified water, we put it in a big tank, and then this tank becomes kind of like your new well. And I don't. We've done a few of these on city water, and we've done the majority of them are on well water because the water problems are so horrific, and that's the only way to really fix everything that might be in the water. But when this water is sitting in these big tanks, it needs to be kept sanitized. Now, you can't just have a gigantic 300-gallon bucket of water sitting in your garage with spiders and pesticides trying to get into it all the time. So we use ozone to go ahead and constantly, 24/7, it's being bubbled in with this kind of like a big air stone like you would find on an aquarium. And it introduces ozone into the water and raises the oxygen level while it's sanitizing and making sure that nothing gets into the water. Kills bacteria, viruses, everything. It's like a magical fix. I love ozone, but it's also an effective thing to do in pools as a kind of a concurrent treatment process. But I know he's about to jump out of his chair.
No.
To tell the Apple story. So tell me the Apple story.
So we had this one fella. He was like a lead engineer at Apple. Like, I'm talking, this guy was the head honcho, and he was working from home, all that stuff. Super rich guy. We went to his house. Paul told me beforehand, he's like, this is a heck of a house. And I walked up, and it was a heck of a house indeed. And we walk in, and there's these three huge, how many gallon tanks?
300 gallons.
Three 300-gallon tanks. So 900 gallons in this, I don't even know what space that would be called.
Basement, little like a storage room in the basement.
Enclave or something. I don't even.
Yeah, it's next to the arcade room.
Arcade room, next to the arcade room. It was like this little room dedicated solely to these tanks. And this guy was sharp as they come, and he knew exactly what we were doing. He was keeping up with it. Paul was giving him some more information on how it works. And yeah, I learned everything about whole house reverse osmosis that day, and it's fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, every one of those is truly a custom creation.
Yeah,
every house is different. Everybody has different needs.
Yep.
You can't just put a whole house RO on every single house. Like if you've got a house from the 80s that has copper and lead held together plumbing, you may have flawless, perfect water, but if you're putting it back in a crappy copper system with lead, you're not really accomplishing what you wanted to. But yeah, that's, if anybody has any, if you want the ultimate in water, you got to give
luxury. I'm talking, this is luxury living, and Paul is MacGyver when it comes to this stuff. He's an engineer by background, so I saw that at work that day, and I just wanted to share that a little bit.
Yeah, he got all pumped up. So
Yeah, it
I'm
was
glad,
awesome.
I'm glad we
It was
got that
freaking
out. I thought he was
awesome.
going to explode.
Yeah, I'm good now.
So-
I'm relieved.
So, oh yeah, so we can master that. All right, back to pools for a second. Otherwise, we're never going to get done.
Yeah.
What other pool was there? Oh, the silver copper ion pool treatment. They call it ion treatment. That's what it is. So this is one of those things I really, and I've got. I think this is probably the way to go if somebody's considering getting a pool. So basically, you've got these electrodes, and one's got copper, one's got silver, and they're solid, right? So you're basically dissolving the silver and the copper. You're creating ions out of it, and you're releasing them into the water. And this stuff, so you got little particles.
Little AG pluses and CU pluses.
Exactly right. You got these things floating around in your water, and so usually it is a 90% copper, 10% silver is the mixture.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that, because they both do specific things. I'm trying to think of. All right, so copper. The reason that the copper is in the water is because the copper helps fight basically plant stuff like algae and things like that, which is something that you're constantly dealing with if you have a pool. And that's usually what the chlorine takes care of. The silver that's dissolved in the water helps. That's kind of like an antimicrobial. That helps to keep the water and knock out all the bacteria. So if you can imagine that you're basically letting dissolved copper and silver into the water, it doesn't evaporate. It stays in the pool. It's not like chlorine. It's not going to off gas and go off into the environment. So once it gets enough in there, it will keep your pool safe. Now, I will say that I tried to get a definitive answer on, is that the only thing that you need? And there are some versions of it out there that claim that that's all you need. And then there's other ones out there that say you really need chlorine in addition to it, but you need very little chlorine. So do your own research on that. But it seems like there's at least a possibility that the entire pool may be treatable using copper and silver, which, of course, the other cool thing is it doesn't get degraded by the UV light from the sun, which is also important on a pool. So you put it in, and it pretty much just, as long as you don't lose any water, your levels are good. So that may be the way to go. But do more. We might actually turn this into another kind of like a joint episode later on. I'll see if I can get a pool guy to join us, but most of them are terrified.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint. I'm not a pool guy. I'm a water specialist, though.
Yeah,
So
we just fix the water.
we
that's in the
fix the
pool.
water. Yep.
So that was our whole pool episode. P is for pools. So I hope that everybody listening got a little bit of something out of this today. It's a little off our beaten path, but that's what we do. Advanced Water Systems, the Connecticut dealer here. Connecticut Richmond is how you find us on the web, as well as on YouTube. And Water Guy Podcast is how you can find us on all the platforms that do podcasting. And I encourage you to subscribe and listen to our previous episodes. And I appreciate all of our existing subscribers that are out there. And we will catch you in 2 weeks. Thank you much.